That's really interesting. That's really cool. Um, let's see. I guess going back to realizing your space as a Black person in Shakespeare and his plays, did that change how you approach roles or how you came into performing his plays in general?
Um, I'm not so interested. I always try to find as much of myself or my family or my friends through the text. And sometimes I'll find it, this is something that I do a lot with my text. My mom has this habit of, I'd say something like, well, I want to go to the football game. And then after that's over, I'm going to go to Applebee's with my friends. And she'll repeat, Applebee's with your friends. Do you think you're grown or whatever? But she has a habit of repeating the last thing that I said and then saying something else. I don't know why, but I started to do that with my text. So if someone says, what is that line? Come, you speak with an idle tongue. Oh no, that's going to bother me because I can't remember if it's go, you speak with a wicked tongue. But I'll repeat whatever my scene partner just previously said in the same way. I speak like this. No, actually, and then I say my line. So that it becomes more real to me. And it's also something I find a lot in our culture. Actually, I think a lot of us do that. You say you want to do what, and then we respond. So I try to find pieces, little pieces like that, and I find a lot of through the plays, especially in the comedies. So I guess that's a way of like it just naturally happening, as opposed to me saying I have to add on this layer of, whatever we think Blackness is or call Blackness. I'm already bringing that because of who I am. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I guess that actually opens up something very interesting because you talk about how you kind of, I don't know, see like your family or friends in the text. And I guess like it kind of, I don't know, makes it a more real space or like a more interesting, more relatable space in that sense, because you can kind of pinpoint certain relationships. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I found that first in Midsummer, when I first started reading A Midsummer Night's Dream, as I got older, and I thought like, oh, this is actually like Helena and Hermia that's my relationship with me and a friend of one of my best friends. Her name is Sonora. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's definitely the Hermia and I'm the Helena. So I imagine having those conversations with her. How do I talk when I'm with her? Of course, I'm like, hitting her while I'm laughing, or, like if we can connect with each other from across the room without saying anything. So usually that's where that comes into play. If I find family and friends in the text, I go, oh, I can picture them saying this. So I'll try to work around that, start around that. That's the seed. And of course it grows over time in rehearsal, but yeah.
Was there a role for a Shakespeare play that you auditioned for in the past that you wish that you'd gotten?
Ah, Um, yeah, I never thought that I wanted to play Juliet until I auditioned for it and did a really, really good audition for it. Not the production where I was talking about the student matinees, but I was like, oh my gosh, I understand this play, but I understand Juliet a lot more
Mhm.
now that I'm older. She's not just some naive, uh, dumb kid. She's incredibly smart, really, really witty. Um, so I auditioned for that and was like, I'm gonna book this, and I did not. I did not book Juliet.
Oh,
So that's one thing where I was like, ooh. But usually I don't. Usually, well, the way that I do auditions or have been given auditions is usually uh, someone might just give me a plain offer, like, we want you to play Miranda in The Tempest, and I say, great, I'll do that. Um, but but usually a theater will say, we're doing The Tempest, so I'm just going to go in with a monologue, and they're going to place me, wherever they see fit, wherever I fit best.
so is that like at a theater that you have like a repertoire with, or like a place that knows your work the best?
Uh, it varies. I usually theaters that I have never worked for. That's how I'll go about it. Well, now we're sending in tapes a lot. Um, but even before the pandemic, if it was a theater that I haven't worked at and I see that they're doing King John, I know deep down in my heart that I want to play Philip the Bastard, but I know that I'm gonna go in with a piece as closely as I can that shows I can play this role. I'm not gonna go into an audition for King John with with a Juliet monologue.
Right.
I'm not, so usually that's how it goes. But sometimes some theaters will say, we are doing Titus Andronicus, and everyone is cast except for Aaron the Moor. So I go, oh yes. So I'm gonna go in for that role.
Um, is there a what is your dream role to play in a Shakespeare play?
Uh, I have to give you my top five.
Okay.
I don't, there's not just one. Actually, I've named a couple of them. So, well, I guess in no particular order, Hamlet, uh, Tamara and Titus Andronicus, Aaron the Moor and Titus Andronicus, Philip the Bastard and King John, and Amelia. I want to play Amelia in Othello, which uh that's well it's that's I'm thinking about a previous question that you asked. Usually when we think about Othello, we just go, oh well, Othello's the only black guy he's the only black person in the play. um and I found that uh I always wanted to challenge that and go, well, I'm a black woman, where could I fit in this show? And so I've always wanted to play Amelia, Iago's wife, because I think that dynamic is interesting. If he talks about how he hates the Moor, what does it look like if his wife is black? Is he with her because he fetishizes black women? Is he with her because he really does love her, but he doesn't want but he's intimidated by this black man in power over him? Um, I think things like that are interesting. And also, I play Cassio in Othello, which makes it just made total sense. It didn't. There was nothing about it where it was like that can't happen.
In the audience,
Cassio and Othello are like this. So
oh, I was sorry. I was just going to say, in the audience, they saw it that way as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, so that production, I was actually really shocked so let me start from the beginning. So that's a good example. I had never worked at this theater, Island Shakespeare Festival, but I knew one of the directors. We were doing 3 shows in rep, and I knew one of the directors was going there, directing Sense and Sensibility. So she was like, I want you to audition for this, but you're gonna have to audition for the full rep because there's 3 shows. Um, so I sent in an audition. I auditioned with her for Sense and Sensibility, and then I sent in a video uh, for the 2 Shakespeare plays, for Othello and Twelfth Night. And I thought, like, oh, if anything, for Othello, they'll probably put me in the ensemble, something like that, and I'll play whatever in Twelfth Night. Uh, but I got an email saying, great, we want you to read these sides for Cassio. And I thought, wow, how interesting. I never thought that, I never had that thought come to my mind of like, oh, Cassio can be Black. So the response from the audience was, this was much more powerful, or I felt more, I was more drawn in. I was more compelled by the relationship between Othello and Cassio, and the hatred that Iago has for Cassio. So it adds a whole other layer to the show. So then I start to think of different things like where the shows do involve race, what happens if we insert Black person here? So if Tamara in Titus Andronicus is usually not played by a Black woman because her lover, Aaron the Moor, is a Moor. But I think, they are the outsiders of the play. They both come from the same place. So what would happen if they did look the same?
Right.
So yeah, those are now that is something that I'm definitely interested in now, especially that we're having this. We are shifting into a place where the theater goes, oh, you know what? Actually, everyone can play every role. You would think that we would have gotten there a while ago, but that is something that I keep in the back of my mind. Like, why would I not go for this show? Why would I not go for this role?
Right.
So yeah.
You actually answered one of the questions I was going to ask. I was going to ask, you make space for Blackness in his Shakespeare's plays, but like what happens when like you run up against something that kind of goes against the creation of that space? So that was a really interesting answer you gave about with Aaron and that, what happens when you put 2 Black people together in that relationship. So that's interesting. Let me see. This has more to do with, I guess, with the style and performance of the theater. What are ways in which you combine the traditional text of Shakespeare with more modern or contemporary stylings of theater and performance?
That usually depends on where the show is being set. So if we are doing if trying to think of a good example, if we're doing a Taming of the Shrew and we're setting it in the 1500s, then I know my posture, I know that the costume is going to be representing that, so I then have to adjust. Do I have a fan? Well, now I need to learn fan language because that's the way that some people would like to, some women would communicate through fan language. But if we're setting Taming of the Shrew in 2021, then I know I'm probably going to be wearing a mask, or I know I might be wearing something like this. My hair is probably going to be like this, as opposed to in a wig or curled a certain way. So that's usually how I decipher that. But I I feel like I want to whisper this. I prefer classical work over contemporary work. I feel like there's a never ending quest with classical work. 6 months after doing a show, I'm on the highway driving and I go, oh my gosh, that's actually how I should have said that line. Just random things will come to my brain about a performance that I've done or a performance that I've seen. But with contemporary work, it seems it's much more straightforward. People just say, I think you're beautiful, as opposed to, your eyes when they glimmer in the moonlight, the beams reflect off of the water. He's Shakespeare's, that his parentheticals are beautiful. So I'm always looking up words. I'm always looking up the root. If this is if this was a saying during the Elizabethan times, where did that come from? There's always it's a never-ending search with the classical work, I think. And when you do contemporary work, it's very much what you see is what you get here.
It's like a variety of interpretation almost with the classical works.
Yeah.
I have to ask you about your social media and Shakespeare. I noticed like on your page, you do like a lot of like little Shakespeare sayings on your posts. What do those, like do for you, and what does that do for like the people who view your pages?
I have a lot of friends who are not involved in the theater, and sometimes, and this has happened over years, but sometimes they'll just say, well, I don't get it. I don't get Shakespeare. Or, I don't understand why you're crazy about it. Or who can understand that? So the posts are just a way to show the use of the language in our current time, or an example of what that language may represent. So I don't know if I still have this post up, but a couple years ago, actually it was Romeo and Juliet, and I was doing these squats up and down the steps, and someone had filmed me backstage just doing these jump squats up and down the steps. And I had just finished reading something for an audition, and one of the lines that the reader has was something about like that person having a big butt, and I was like, yes, what a perfect caption to put under this. So it's sort of like it's like a shot of Shakespeare where people go, oh, that actually went down easier than what I thought. This isn't something that is actually as distant as I thought. So I'll have some of my friends like laugh or make a comment, and I'm like, see, you understand it because you think this is funny, or you understand it because you said this in response. So that's why I started doing it, but also because there really isn't a day where I'm not thinking about Shakespeare, because I'm either teaching it or I'm doing it, or I have a question about something that I've seen in a play, so I need to look it up myself. So I'm constantly thinking about it. I'm writing a play that has to do with Shakespeare and my identity, actually. So I start to do research. So it's just an ongoing thing. So I wrap that into my social media because it is a part of me, I should say.
Does that play have a name? How far along are you in the production of it?
Well, I'm I'm not sure. I want to call everything the Dark Lady. But I think right now the working title is Masks. And I call it masks because I wonder how many different masks do people see me in from the outside looking in. Um, I wonder about identity, like how people may perceive the work that I do. Why are you so obsessed with this dead white man's work? Um, I feel like we're in a time where this is a special time because we are saying, you know what, we need to introduce more people of color, more women, more people, non-binary playwrights and stories into schools. And we should take away a lot of the classical work that we study, i.e. Shakespeare. And I am not a fan of that. I think you can introduce new work and also keep Shakespeare. But I've had these conversations with people and they get really upset when I say, I don't think we should get rid of it. So then I start to wonder, like, oh, I wonder, like, what do they think of me? And some people will say, like, you don't ever feel like you're shucking and jiving on stage doing this white man's work, or, you know, so it just makes me think about the different masks that people see me wear. What would my identity, my identity as Renea the person, if I just stopped doing Shakespeare completely? Like, then what would I do? Because I don't do a lot of contemporary work, and I do audition for contemporary work. I don't book it often, but like, what would identity be without it? So it's very much finding itself. This is very new, but it's finding itself to be about my identity in Shakespeare. How does Shakespeare see me? How do people from the outside looking in see me? How do I see myself without Shakespeare?
Um, let's see. That was a really good answer. There's a question that I want to ask. You're talking about how, I guess, others see you and, you know, question your space on stage. And so I'm just wondering, this disdain that, you know, you get for sticking up for Shakespeare, does it come from white people, from Black and brown people? Where does it come from?
It comes from both, interestingly enough. And I can understand, and I've had this conversation with other Black actors. I understand we do need to have more texts in our curriculum written by us, but I don't think that it must push out something else as valuable as Shakespeare. I'm actually really interested in pairing Shakespeare and adaptations. There's a play called Fat Ham, written by James Imes, and it's basically like an adaptation of Hamlet. And he is a Black man, and it is a Black family. So I go, well, what's the problem with reading Hamlet and reading this play and talking about the similarities and the differences? So I've had that conversation, but I've also had the conversation with, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but like the woke whites, where, you know, white people very much tried to tell me about myself or about my struggle.
Yes.
And we have to change this. We have to change this. And I let them know, like, I understand your point of view. However, I just think it isn't beneficial. It isn't as beneficial as people think, just getting rid of Shakespeare. Now, I also understand, like, Yeah, we don't really need to read the Comedy of Errors in, AP Lit.
Right.
So really what I think we should keep in the schools are Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth. Those are like the three staples. I think that we should keep. So we don't have to get rid of him.